Considering home security? Consider this. For 140 years, ADT has helped stop more crime than any other home security company. The yard sign isn't just a sign, it's a line in the sand. It's no wonder 5 times more people choose ADT to protect their homes. Visit ADT.com to learn more. For license information and terms and conditions, visit ADT.com.
Booger McFarland is here in our studio. Lots of really interesting stuff today, going from all the way from the extraordinary insight that Eduardo Perez offered about how Darvish was tipping his pitches to Carlos Correa proposing to his girlfriend on the field and us relaxing a long-standing Mike and Mike rule. We are against the in-stadium proposal, but we have established a corollary today, Booger. If you win the championship, you can then propose on the field with no penalty.
You know what's amazing to me, Greeny, is we always show the proposals, especially when they say yes, and it's a feel-good moment, and Eduardo was really emotional because he knows the guy, and I get it. How come we never show the ones that say no? I'm just curious because, I mean, we paint a picture, like if somebody's watching this show, they're going to see a picture that if I propose, she's going to say yes.
Right.
That's not always the case.
Listen, when you got married, when you got engaged and asked your wife to marry you, how would you assess, what number would you put of the percentage of confidence you had that she was going to say yes?
I was close to 100.
Me too. I would say I was close to 100.
But you want 100, though.
Well, you can't ever be 100, can you?
You should be close on this.
Now, I think there are people who have, many people, I think, who before they get engaged, they talk about it. They say, well, we're going to get engaged, we're going to get married at such and such a time. So maybe there has already been an agreement, and maybe they had that. I don't know. I don't know Carlos Correa or his girlfriend at all. And they're a lovely young couple, and I couldn't be happier for them. And it's a beautiful moment. And Eduardo Perez actually teared up watching it as Correa's little sister is sitting there watching the thing with this great look on her face. It is a beautiful moment.
Yes.
But there has to be some uncertainty, right? There has to be some conceivable chance.
Yes.
I think I've told you this story before. I think I've told it on the air anyway. When I proposed to my wife, Stacey, I said, it's a long story. I don't have time to tell it right now because Cal Ripken's going to call, and I want to get. But I will tell at some point this morning the details of how I proposed to her, and it took a good 30 seconds before I knew if she had said yes or no. There was a reason why I wasn't sure she was in or not.
There was a pause?
There was no pause. But her response, based upon my idiocy, threw me off. It was as most things are in my life, it was sort of a discrepancy over wording.
Yeah.
So that's the direction that went. So we went with a little bit of a problem there. Okay, let's do off the top here so we can get a bunch of sports stuff in there for you here, and then we'll get Cal Ripken in with all of that. Astros win 5-1 over the Dodgers last night. They win their first ever World Series championship. And again, you were part of a similar situation when you guys won in Tampa. That was a team that had been just awful. I mean, but basically were known for being awful. Yeah. And then there you were celebrating a championship. Well, here's an Astros team that 4 years ago lost 111 games. So you know better than anybody what it's like to come from that.
It's an amazing feeling, Greeny, to start at the bottom and then rise to the top, especially when a plan comes together. This plan was put forth. They won a cover of SI in 2014 saying this would be the year, and it's amazing how it's happened. Now in 2017, they're World Series champions. Congratulations to the Astros.
Off the top.
George Springer is named the World Series MVP from hard-hitting New Britain, Connecticut. A lot of people around this area here where we operate from are very excited about this. He had 5 home runs in this series, including last night. That ties the World Series record, which had been held by Reggie Jackson and Chase Utley, now shared with Springer. He also had 29 total bases, which sets a record for any postseason series. And again, Booger, he hits leadoff.
Yeah.
When your leadoff man is hitting 5 home runs in a series, you know this is not the game of baseball that I grew up with.
Well, Green, he's got 6 home runs in the postseason, all from the leadoff spot. That's tied for the most from the first spot in the batting order in one postseason, for the most since Lenny Dykstra in 1993.
I'm thinking back to the teams of my youth, and Hembo, maybe you could look these up for me, but like in the late 70s, which is when I first learned about baseball, the Big Red Machine, man, Pete Rose would hit at the top of the order. The Yankee teams that I loved in the late 70s, Mickey Rivers would hit the top of the order. If you added up all the home runs they hit in the postseason, was it as many as George Springer hit in the last week? I'd be interested to know. Meanwhile, football, we got the NFL weekend kicks off tonight with the Bills visiting the Jets. The Jets, hard luck losers of 3 straight, all games they easily could have won. The Bills, meanwhile, are the talk of the league, and now they add Kelvin Benjamin. Are you a buy hire Booger McFarland on Buffalo.
Yes, I am, because they understand who they are. Tyrod Taylor is not trying to throw the football 50 times a game. He's one of the dual-threat quarterbacks in the National Football League, and he's taking care of the football. 8 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He's got 175 rush yards, and so he's able to keep the sticks moving, and they've taken on the personality of their coach, Sean McDermott. They're a tough, physical team, but they're not afraid to get behind Tyrod Taylor, so I like what the Bills are doing.
So Booger buys Buffalo. Try saying that 10 times fast. Elsewhere, the Browns wide receiver Josh Gordon has been granted a conditional reinstatement. He hasn't played since the 2014 season. If everything goes well between now and then, he can start practicing on November 20th. What do you think is a realistic expectation for Josh Gordon, who remains extraordinarily young? He's been around. His story is known for so long. People may perceive him to be a lot older than he is. He still has an entire career ahead of him if he can get things straight.
Anything he gives you, to me, is a plus. It's a bonus. Greeny, I look at this situation different than most, because I don't think Josh Gordon should be in the National Football League. I think Josh Gordon has had so many opportunities going all the way back to his collegiate career. I mean, opportunity after opportunity after opportunity, and he's failed at all of them. And I think he needs to get his life together and prove that he can have his life together consistently, not just for a year at a time when you can go get back in front of the commissioner and say, hey, look what I've done in the last year. Prove that your life can be on the straight and narrow path for a long time. So although I want to be optimistic, I've been optimistic in the past before about him, and I've been let down. So hope he does well. Anything he gives you is a bonus.
Off the top.
And finally, the Cavaliers are bad. I mean, they're just a flat-out bad basketball team. They lost by double digits last night to the Pacers. Oh, by the way, the Pacers are better than we thought they'd be, and Victor Oladipo is playing very well for them there. But that clearly isn't the story today. The story today is Cleveland losing again. They are 3-5. So on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being, emergency Mayday. Oh, let's do your DEFCON scale. I love Booger. If you don't follow Booger McFarland on college Saturdays, then you are missing all the fun. So at what DEFCON level would you describe the Cavaliers right now?
It's 4 right now. And I think because it's early in the season, it's 4. But the one thing that's alarming, Greeny, is the fact that defensively they're terrible again. Their pick-and-roll defense is awful. LeBron James almost gave you a triple-double last night and he lost by 17 at home. And so what does that tell you? Something is amiss inside that locker room. I'm not sure what it is, and Ty Lue doesn't seem to have the answer.
All right, we have more on that as the morning continues. But that is Off the Top. We are Mike and Mike, and our guests appear on the Shell Pennzoil Performance line, taking synthetic motor oil performance to a whole new level. Make the switch to Pennzoil Synthetics today. And on the Shell Pennzoil Performance line, we are delighted to welcome to the program the Hall of Famer Cal Ripken Jr., who's been watching the World Series along with everybody else, and will share his thoughts with us as well. Cal, thanks for doing this. Greeny here, and Booger McFarland is with me this morning. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's always our pleasure to talk baseball with you. Are you kidding? And I want to start with this. Eduardo Perez was in here an hour ago. You may not have had a chance to hear it, but fascinating insight that he said as he was watching last night, he himself picked up on, went back and did a little video study of it, and picked up on a way in which he believes that Yu Darvish was tipping his pitches. And just very quickly, when Darvish was throwing the fastball, his hand would not move in the glove at all. And when he was throwing the slider, he could see the hand moving a little bit, obviously getting his fingers into the appropriate position. Can you give us a sense of the amount of time and energy and effort that a baseball player, particularly over the course of a postseason series, will put into looking for tips like that, and how significant you think something like that may have been last night?
Well, I mean, it's quite possible. There's some guys that I've played with as teammates that could do that really well, like Robbie Alomar. And I would even say that Armando Benitez, when we played the Cleveland Indians, he had a power fastball and a power off-speed pitch. It seemed like he wasn't fooling them at all, and later we found out that they had his pitches. He did a similar thing. So if you fall into a habit and they get it, it's a huge advantage to have, to know that by what they do, what they tell you right in front of you, they're tipping your pitches that way. It didn't dawn on me last night watching the game. It just seemed like Darvish's control was off. He wasn't using his fastball as much, and he had to come into good hitters counts. It appeared that way to me, but that's a really interesting insight that Eduardo had.
Yeah, it was terrific. And let me ask you this, because it would seem to me, if the other team is seeing something like this, and this doesn't have to be in this particular instance, but in any instance, how much self-scouting in your experience goes on something like this? How much time in your experience do pitchers and maybe pitching coaches take watching themselves to make sure they aren't giving away what they're throwing?
I think a lot of times there's paranoia that happens when your pitcher's not pitching really well. And in my experience, that they try to look for an explanation of why your pitcher's not pitching well. And many times they come up with an idea that they were tipping their pitches to give them a new start. But tipping your pitches is real. Frank Robinson was really, really good at it. He could sit there and watch from the side. And after you do it for a while, there are little things that you look for. In a guy in the stretch. How high does he pick his glove up when he sets on a fastball against a breaking ball? And just sometimes a finger out of your glove. That's why pitchers put their finger inside their glove and they don't have that hole anymore, because some pitchers would actually extend their finger out on one pitch and they keep it close to the glove on another. So we're all creatures of habit, and hitters are in there watching the pitcher all the time. And I would imagine in this day and age, the technology makes it a little easier to study.
Cal, I'm just curious. Dave Roberts talked about the ability for Clayton Kershaw to pitch last night, said he'd be available for 4 to 5 innings, but yet and still they start Yu Darvish. Would you have been opposed to starting Clayton Kershaw last night, and what do you make of that move?
Well, to me, I laugh a little bit because baseball, for a long time, when I played, there was an aggressive sort of nature to look at series as a small sample size, and we want to get our best pitcher out there at all times. And they were willing to push the pitcher game 1, game 4, game 7, bring the starter back that was very effective, that was hot, bring him back in relief sometimes. And then for a while, the baseball went away from that. There was numbers that said people don't pitch well in 3 days rest, and we can't afford to take a risk in putting our starter in a reliever position that hasn't been that comfortable. For the last 2 years, Francona last year using Miller almost at all. I know I was covering that series, and I kept coming into Francona and saying, his arm's going to fall off. But there is an aggressive behavior to want to go to your hot pitchers, and that's really sometimes the difference in a series. It's all about execution. These teams are really, really good. One small thing can make a big difference. I wouldn't have started Kershaw last night. I thought Yu Darvish was going to pitch well. He's got great stuff. Having not pitched well the time before, he usually rebounds. But it is interesting now that you brought that to my attention that he could have been tipping his pitches. Houston could have had a huge advantage, and they could have got him for that reason.
Mike Cal Ripken Jr. is with us in his first 2 years. He won Rookie of the Year, he won MVP, and he caught the last out in a World Series win in 1983. And that was a totally different sport. In fact, the sport is totally different than it was, it feels like, as recently as 3 or 4 years ago. In this World Series, no pitcher threw 100 pitches in a game. No pitcher threw 100 pitches in any of the games for either of the teams in this series. Are we seeing the beginning of a trend here, Cal? Is this just the direction this thing is going to go now? Are we in a world now where if a starting pitcher in a postseason game, a pitcher making $25 million a year, if he gets you into the 6th inning, he's done his job?
I don't know if they were looking at a trend or not. My dad, I always remember him saying things go in cycles, and things seem to go in cycles, and they feed off themselves. So I don't know if that's a trend. There's an urgency now, but there is a consequence to going to your bullpen early. You start to wear them out. You start to see the guys that were almost unhittable with their stuff. All of a sudden, they're giving it up a little bit more. So it's hard to manage that 7-game series, but. I wouldn't say there's a trend. There's just a greater aggression right now to try to capture the hot pitcher out there and try to get him through.
You look at the Astros right now, very young team having won the World Series. The Cubs were the same way. You won the World Series, just 23 years old. Just how difficult is it going to be for these Astros and maybe the Cubs last year to get back to this point and kind of maintain that excellence, Cal?
Well, it's really, really hard to win the World Series, period. You can prove in the course of a 162-game season who's the better team because you have better depth and you play well. And the Cubs have proved that. The Astros have proved that. But when you get to the playoffs, it's a whole new ball game. I would venture to say that even teams that aren't in the playoffs could beat a playoff team in a short series. It's just a matter of getting hot and executing. And when you don't execute on one play, Bellinger in the first inning last night, it's a pitcher covering first base. I thought that was a huge play in the ball game because you could minimize that inning to a one run inning, but then it turns into something a little bit more, and then the floodgates open, right after that. But I don't think it's the youngness. I'm amazed at how poised a lot of the young players are. They play in a lot of games in amateur ball now. They come through the system. They're not intimidated by the World Series game anymore. So in the next year after you win, naturally teams are up for you a little bit more. In the long 162-game season, I would imagine the Cubs found that out, that they come after you a little bit more. They're a little bit more motivated because you won, and they want to try to measure themselves against the best. But, proving that you're good during the regular season is one thing, and then actually going out there and executing the playoffs is, I think it's an entirely different season.
Mike and Mike, Cal Ripken with us.
It's hard.
Yeah, of course. On the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, we're presented by Progressive Insurance, and you're so connected now with youth baseball. And I'm sure many people are aware of the Cal Ripken Senior Foundation, which you guys started in 2001 in memory of your dad, and helps kids across the country. Just this past month, you opened up your 70th Youth Development Park. So I'm curious, when you watch young kids playing now, we see the way the sport is changing. Everybody is swinging from their heels. It looks like every swing is the trajectory of it is up, and they're trying to hit home runs. And if it's either a home run or a strikeout. I mean, George Springer just won the MVP of the World Series. He had 5 home runs from the leadoff spot. What are you seeing on the youth level relative to that? And how do you think that? What does that tell us about what the future of baseball looks like with these guys? It seems like home run or bust has become very much the mentality in the sport.
Yeah, I mean the whole notion that a strikeout is just an out has come into the forefront, and people don't worry about it. It used to be an embarrassment, especially in youth baseball, when you struck out. And then that trend has kind of gone the other way, where we're willing to not cut down on our swing, but 2 strikes and score runs with the long ball. But if you look at Houston's success, and this could be a trend that you're starting to look at, is they went from striking out a lot to being the team that was the hardest to strike out. And it does matter putting the ball in play. It does matter to have productive outs. It does matter to do the little things in the course of the game and not just swing from the from your heels. Kids copy what they see in the big league, so we see that in our tournaments, and you get a lot of attention for the home runs, and so people are doing that. We're trying to change the game a little bit, teach it, and trying to have them understand situational baseball and moving a runner from second to third and understanding the smaller nuances of the game. And I would still say, especially when you get in the playoffs, the teams that do that the best are the ones that can win those tight one-run games, those extra inning ball games. And just a little thing last night, I can't remember the runner was on second base, but when you're down 5-0, you cannot get doubled off on a line drive to anybody in the infield. Those small little things have a tendency to add up, and you can't make your outs on the bases. And so we try to teach that with the kids, but the kids are going to copy what they see in the big leagues.
Cal, where do we see the Dodgers going? Here's a team that has among the highest payrolls in baseball the last couple of years. They fall short again. What do we see as their flaw, and how can they fix it so they can get back here again next year?
Well, I had a little.
Uh-oh. I think we're losing Cal's phone there. Let's give it a second and see if we get. Go ahead, Cal. Sorry, we're having a little trouble hearing you. Try that again.
I didn't realize my question was that tough.
No, it was, you know what, there was that long pause, and my initial reaction was, but Cal's taking a real moment to think about this and really ponder the answer. We'll see if we can't get his phone in a better spot, and if we can't, then we'll just say here, thank you so much, as always, to Cal Ripken. We were going to run in a minute anyway, one of the all-time great players, obviously, in the Hall of Famer, and caught the last out of the World Series in 1983, and it's always just a pleasure to talk baseball with him and get his perspective. And again, going back to the beginning of the conversation, you know, if indeed you see if indeed Eduardo Perez is right, and those guys last night, the Astros were getting their pitches tipped from Darvish, they had a sense of what he was throwing, and he just didn't have it right away, then maybe that game is almost over before it starts. And it's fascinating to think about it that way in the sport that so much of it is in preparation. We always think of football as being the sport that's all about preparation. It's the only one where you practice more than you play. The other game is basically you play. Well, in this case, if they had that scouting report on Darvish and they were ready for it last night, it won them the World Series.
Do you think Clayton Kershaw should have started?
Say it again.
Do you think Clayton Kershaw should have started?
I'm just not. My mind is not conditioned to think that way. So no, I would. It would. I mean, I heard Buster say it, and I understand what he's saying. But I'm thinking, like, what was Darvish's record down the stretch? He was unbelievable in the second half of the season.
Yeah, but the last outing he had, he was terrible.
I get it, but that's one game, right? So George Springer struck out 4 times in game 1, and then he was the MVP. So I'm thinking, I'm going to put my starter out there who I'm counting on to go out there and pitch a great game for me. So I need to readjust my thinking. If the thinking is going to be getting 4 innings out of my starter, if I get 4 zeros from my starter to begin a game, I'm happy with that. Then I have to completely rethink everything I think I know about baseball.
Right.
Because that's just not the way my mind works. The Madison Bumgarners of the world coming in and throwing whatever he did in Game 7 in 2014, that has become legend because they don't happen all the time. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, in retrospect, if you were going to be if I had told you Darvish is going to give you 4 zeros tonight, and you would be thrilled and satisfied with that, then, yeah, I'd have given the ball to Kershaw and hoped that he could get them for me. Mm-hmm. But I think I would have been hoping that Darvish was going to give me more than that.
I don't think there was any way Darvish was going past 5 last night, and the fact that if you've gotten 4 from him, you would have been happy. In my opinion, if you're gonna put Kershaw in as early as the second inning, why not go ahead and start it? Now, if that's your mindset. Now, if you're going to somebody else after that, then all bets are off. But if Kershaw is warming, if he's the first guy up, then to me, he should have been the guy that started the game off, because it tells me that you weren't sold somehow on Darvish. Not based on the consistency that he had down the stretch, but based on the last outing when he pitched in Houston. You weren't sold on him, the fact that you had Kershaw ready to go so early and that Kershaw pitched you 4 shutout innings. To me, that told me a lot right there. So I'm of the belief that if he's coming in that early, go ahead and start it.
Entering the World Series, Darvish allowed 3 earned runs in his previous 5 starts combined. He had an ERA of .88 with 35 strikeouts and 2 walks. So he has 1 bad outing. I'm still thinking that's my Darvish. We went out and got this guy because he's a difference maker down the stretch. Everyone was talking about Verlander and what he brought to the Astros. Well, Darvish was extraordinarily significant in the second half of the season for the Dodgers. So, look, obviously you're right, and obviously we can look back on it now and we can say he didn't have it and you could have done it. And maybe that's the way I need to train my mind to think. But I was, like Cal was saying, like back in the day, you would pitch your big horse in games 1, 4, and 7. I remember Jim Leland when he had Kevin. What was the pitcher named Brown?
Kevin Brown.
Kevin Brown.
Yeah.
When the Marlins made the World Series that year, and he went out and he named his starting pitchers for the World Series. Brown. He's going to throw them in game 1, game 4, game 7. That was the plan.
Yeah.
They don't do that anymore. So if you were going to go game 1, game 5, and start him in game 7, it can happen. All right, we'll get Herman in here. We got a lot to do this morning. Certainly the World Series is our primary story, but we got a lot of football to get to, and we'll do it with Herman Edwards in our studio next.
Computer, execute 12.4p operation.
Optimizing algorithm. Running encryption packet alpha. Night. Oh, I don't feel so good.
What is it, computer?
Is it hot in here? It feels hot in here. I feel a little clammy. I should lie down or something.
A computer with a virus? Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
Those oysters Rockefeller were a mistake.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Booger McFarland is with me.
You play to win the game.
And Herman is here, and I had so much fun watching all the specials and the retrospectives they did on the anniversary of the You Play to Win the Game speech, which was just the other day.
That situation was kind of interesting when I reflect on it. You're talking about when it happened. We're sitting there 2-5. It's a Tuesday. No players are in the room, and the question was posed by Judy Batista, a good friend. Is the season over? Are you guys? She almost said the word like quit, and like, guys, don't go there. And I went off for a moment, with the No one's in the building. Kind of press conference on Tuesday. I go back in my office. I start working, working. Go home at night, 12:30. Light comes on. So I'm coming into the house. My wife meets me at the door. She says, "What have you done?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "It's all over." She said it was all day, at every news station they're talking about. I said, "What are you talking about?" I don't know what she's talking about, right? She said, all she said was this, "Hello," and I went, "Oh, that one." I said, "Was it good?" She said, "Oh, you said you got them all fired up."
It was the 15-year anniversary of it just the other day, and it was fun watching some of the retrospectives on that. And it's interesting for me on this day, as we crown a World Series champion last night, to have the two of you in studio. Again, Booger McFarland and Herman. Booger, you won 2 championships during your career. Yeah. Herman, you've told me a million times. You hate confetti. Yeah. To this day, you hate confetti.
Well, he's a Super Bowl champion. I'm a Super Bowl participant. Different. Different. Very difficult to get there. 90% of the players never get to a Super Bowl. We know that. But when you get there, those Dodgers right now, I know how they feel.
How do they feel?
You're in a dark place right now. You kind of reflect on the whole season and you go, you know what? And here's what kills you. If you played in that game and you didn't play your best, it's like, man, really? And then you think, well, we got a good team. We'll get back. I don't know about that. I've been in the league 30 years. I lost the AFC Championship game to Buffalo when I was with Kansas City. With Booger and those guys, lost the NFC Championship game.
In Tampa.
Yeah, at Tampa against the Rams.
Right? Remember it?
And got to one, obviously, with Philadelphia. That's 30 years.
As a player, 1980, lost to the Raiders.
Yeah. So the 30 years in the league, and you get 3 shots at it. We get to one, and you lose. And you go, really? Really? And you'd never forget it. I mean, my daughters, I always say, birthdays and stuff, no confetti. They can have balloons and their whistles, no confetti. They don't like confetti.
But here's what happens, Greeny, on the seasons that we didn't win the championships. At some point in the offseason, you start to reflect. And there's a switch or a day where you say, you know what? I stopped looking behind and I started looking forward. Now, for everyone, that's different, okay? For me, that would always happen by the first time I got to the first tee when the spring, when the leaves and the flowers would bloom. When I got to the first tee, I'm already looking forward and thinking about what we could do next year. But every player is different. But it's going to happen for the Dodgers at some point. Kershaw is going to reflect. He's going to start thinking about, man, what if I'd have started this game? What if I'd have came in a little earlier? What if I could have prevented some of this? What about in Game 5 when I had a 4-0 lead and a 7-4 lead? What if I finished that game? At some point, he's going to think about all that. And then he'll start thinking about, you know what? A la Ben Roethlisberger, I'm one of the best pitchers in the world. Why can't I get this team there again next year? And he'll start moving, and he'll get into his offseason workouts. But that's a thin line for everyone.
Yeah, go ahead, Herman.
It's just so hard to get to those championship games. It just is. I mean, look, there's some luck involved into it, health-wise of your team, and all these things play a factor when you break it down. Now, you don't think about that when you're there. When you're actually – and the game's over, it's like, okay, we'll get back next year. And we had a good team. And we said, we'll get back next year. Well, we got in the playoffs, and we lose to the Giants in the first round. So now we're out again. It's like, okay. And you're always chasing it. I mean, that's what's great about sports. You're always chasing, I want to play in that game. I want to play in that big game where I can be considered a world's champion.
Mike, Booger, and Herman are in my studio here. Let's get to some other stuff while I have you. Let's talk a little football.
Yeah.
I will admit to having been really surprised. Obviously, I'm wrong, and I have been on the bandwagon of the Patriots are not going to trade Garoppolo no matter what. If they were going to trade him, I thought they would have done it before the draft last year. And there's so many different reports out there, varying different stories of why they did it. Did Bill really want to do it, or did Kraft have something to do with it? Who knows? I don't know. We'll never know. What we do know for sure is they have hitched their wagon to Tom Brady until he is 42 or 43 years old. And I get it. And he's the cover story of ESPN, the magazine this week, and everything else. He's the greatest player ever. Mm-hmm. I get it. And if he can do it, or if anyone can do it, maybe it's him. I get all of that. But it's never been done. And people very seldom win money making bets on things that have never happened before. Were you surprised they made that trade?
A little bit, but here again, knowing that they could not keep Garoppolo.
Yeah.
I mean, that was in the cards for them.
Could.
Well, they could, but they weren't.
It would have been tough to pay both of them.
Spend a lot of money.
Yeah. I mean,
one of the stories, in fairness, that I heard was that they actually told him they would give him a bunch of money, and he wanted out anyway. He just didn't want to be behind time.
That's the problem. The kid wants to play. I mean, eventually you want to play.
Right.
I mean, it's one thing to sit behind Tom Brady. Okay, I've learned the system. I've been here, but I want to play. You want to eventually. Hey, I want to be the guy. And so, with that being said, I think a couple things come to mind. I think if you're New England, they are an organization that has done a pretty good job of drafting quarterbacks not in the first round, right? Mm. I mean, Tom Brady was a 6th-round pick. Garoppolo was a 2nd-round pick. Brissett was what, 3rd, 4th-round pick?
3rd, I believe.
Okay, so I mean, they just feel like, you know what? Okay, Tom will play this year, maybe another year. We'll draft a guy this year. And he won't be a 1st-round pick. We'll get a guy, and we'll bring him along in the system, and we'll have our guy. And they're betting on their staff and how they've done it in the past. Because think about that. They got Garoppolo and Brissett and got something for them before they walked out of the door.
They did.
They got draft picks. They said, hey, we developed them, and they're playing for us, and they're behind Captain America, and other teams said, we want those guys, right? Yeah. Not knowing that, hey, is Garoppolo going to be Matt Castle? We don't know that. Small sample size. Remember, Matt Castle went in there and won all those games.
Sure. Yeah.
And then, he's like, oh, okay. And then all of a sudden, when he left New England, he had the playbook, but he didn't have the players. It's kind of, here we go. Okay, you're on your own, partner. I mean, so Garoppolo's going to San Francisco, just like the coach did, Shanahan from Atlanta. And I said it when he took the job. I said, hey, he's great. He's got all these plays. Julio Jones, Freeman, they're not going with him. Now Garoppolo's going from New England. Guess what? Gronk's not coming with him. Those guys ain't coming. So here you go. What's going to happen? We'll see.
Were you surprised, Booger?
Not really when you look at the economics of it. I think we all expect it. Tom Brady's different. I played against Tom Brady. He's not the most athletic guy in the world, but you talk about Peyton Manning gets a lot of credit for being a student of the game. Tom Brady is so cerebral. He's such a student of the game on the field. He's so aware of himself and his body. I think he can play another 3 or 4 years, Greeny. He doesn't get hit as much as other quarterbacks throughout the league. Even though he's getting hit more this year, he doesn't get hit as much as everyone else. I think he can be there another 3 or 4 years. And the Patriots have always made a living on maximizing assets. If you look at some of the guys they've traded a year too early rather than a year too late, and when you look at the fact that if they would have tried to keep Garoppolo, let's say Garoppolo says, I'm okay with being there. I'm okay with hanging out and playing behind Tom Brady, but you got to pay me.
You got to pay me.
Okay, so now you're going to pay Tom Brady his 18 to 20. Jimmy G wants his 15 to 18 million. So now we're going to have almost 40 million tied up in your quarterback position. I thought that would have been a bit much to ask. Speaking of Garoppolo, Coach, let me ask you this. What do we make of Jimmy Garoppolo? Here's a guy. He had an opportunity to start 4 games. Didn't make it. Got hurt through those 4 games. Now he goes to San Francisco. There are reports that Kyle Shanahan said, I might not even play him this year. What do we make of Jimmy G, and what do you think about that decision?
Well, I think for San Francisco, you get a look at a guy. You're not tied into him, obviously. I think he needs to play for them to find out what kind of guy he is, because they're going to evaluate him with the players he has around him.
Right.
He doesn't have a great surrounding cast, so you got to take that in consideration. But I think you got to watch him play. I don't think he sits all year and doesn't play. I mean, why would you do that? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. Right. You need to play the kid just to let him play. Okay, I think when you watched him play, he's got good QB intelligence. Visualizes things pretty good, reads coverages, get the ball out of his hand. Not a powerful arm, but he can spin it good enough. Mm-hmm. Athletic, but like what you just said, was supposed to play 4 games. He gets hurt the 2nd game. I'm like, wait a minute. The guy, you got to be available. You can't get hurt the 2nd game, son. Yeah. You only played 1 game, and you went to Arizona, and we got all say, oh, yeah, he went there and beat Arizona. Oh, yeah, he's really good. It's like, he get hurt. I said, you can't get hurt. If you're a quarterback, you have to be available. Now, is that a concern? It's not a concern, but it's kind of like odd. He gets hurt the 2nd game. He starts. It's like, that's not good.
Let's see if and when he gets on the field for San Francisco this year. We'll take a short break. We have a lot more to get to. A lot of other deals this weekend, including one. Will we see Kelvin Benjamin? They play tonight. When will that happen? We've got a lot to get to here. Stay with us. Mike and Mike. The Astros won the World Series. We'll be right back. Some of the Twitter here. It's just me. Sean says Kershaw should have started, but that aside, Darvish should have been pulled when it took him 13 pitches to get Yuli off the plate. And again, Bobby tweeting the decision by Roberts not to start Clayton Kershaw will haunt him for the rest of his life. Look, the bottom line, I just gave you the numbers on Darvish. In his last 5 starts, he gave up 3 earned runs. He had 35 strikeouts and 3 walks. He had an ERA of .88.
Okay.
He was dominating through the second half of the season and through the entire postseason leading up to that bad start in the one World Series game. I can't sit here and tell the manager he should have gone away from Darvish last night.
So
I can't do it.
If I give you the point that Darvish should have started, will you give me the point that he should have pulled him at the end of the first inning?
Yes. I mean, if you see him getting hit like
Right.
that and you don't think you have a chance, then yes. That part of it I'm willing to talk about.
Gotcha.
Because that's now that you're seeing it happen.
Yes.
But I'm talking about having to see it coming. And I don't think it's fair to tell a manager, don't throw that guy out there when he's pitched for you as well as he has. All right, Herman, I have a few minutes left with you, so let's get some Straight Talk brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. Let's look at some of the other deals that were made here. The Bills bring in Kelvin Benjamin from Carolina in a trade that surprised a lot of people, including Cam Newton. How quickly can he become an important part of what they do, and how much better are they with him?
Well, they're better as far as the vertical passing game, and especially in the red zone because of his height and his length. And I think this is a team that is a big play-action football team. I mean, 56% of the time they are run-action, or they would like to run the ball, but off that is play-action. Tyrod Taylor has been in the past a good deep ball thrower. Not so much this year, but I think Benjamin helps him. He could actually play tonight, be quite honest. I mean, he could get in the huddle, and you can just tell him, hey, look, run a go route. I mean, come on, right. I'll throw it to you. It's a jump ball, right? I mean, ain't that hard to put the receiver in there. So I think he can play. He helps them. He helps their passing attack.
It's an interesting one. You know, you could see Cam Newton was not happy about it at all with that deal being made. Dwayne Brown to the Seahawks, how significant is that? They've had offensive.
Yeah, have you seen Russell Wilson play lately?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay, it's unbelievable. I mean, what he's doing without an offensive line and no running game. I mean, you know, he's considered an MVP candidate. He's got to be now. I mean, the way he's played the last couple weeks, I mean, it's unbelievable. You have Russell Wilson.
And so how much of a difference does Brown make?
Oh, big time. I mean, you're talking about a left tackle. I mean, this guy,
tremendous.
Good player now.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a real good player.
How much better did Seattle become? The other moves will get more attention because they're sexier things. But, Brown, how much better did Seattle become this week?
Greeny, consider this. Seattle at one point was playing with the guy that played basketball at left tackle.
Mm-hmm.
Now you add a legitimate left tackle there. Russell Wilson can finally say, you know what, maybe I can sit in the pocket more than 1.5 seconds right now. I think the move for Dwayne Brown and the Jay Ajayi move were the two best moves at the trade deadline, because two teams that are playoff Super Bowl caliber teams got better at positions they needed, especially Philadelphia. Philadelphia, although LeGarrette Blount was running the football well, they got a guy now that can be a home run hitter at the tailback spot. So I love those two moves, Coach.
Yeah, Ajayi, it's interesting. You know, he hasn't had a run over 25 yards yet. I mean, no. Look, the Miami team, it's amazing. They have no running touchdowns.
Yeah.
0. Now, obviously, he's in a much better place with this offense in Philadelphia because they can throw it as well. So that always helps the runner. And if you can run, then that means that you can throw it. So it works both ways. But now, how do they divide the runs between him and Blount? They got two bruisers inside. Is there 30 runs? Okay, do they get 15 apiece? It'll be interesting how they do. This lineup with both of them running.
Yeah, all these moves, with the exception of the Dwayne Brown one, really surprised me. I was very taken aback by the trade of Benjamin. I was very taken aback by the trade of Ajayi.
Probably the most ever that I've witnessed in the last 5 or 6 years. I mean, of good players.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, starting caliber players that actually went to other teams, and I think all the trades made sense. To be quite honest, when Darius goes to Jacksonville, and Jacksonville's 32nd against the run. Hopefully, he can be one of those guys helping run. That Jacksonville defense pretty good now.
Because we always focus on the team that the player got traded to.
Yes.
Go back to the Kelvin Benjamin. What does it say about Carolina? They're willing to trade Kelvin Benjamin, their number one guy.
Well, they got Funches. See, they got Funches, and they want more speed. So Samuels is a guy they like. Shepard is another guy. Now, here's what happens though: they're shorter. Accuracy is important for Cam Newton. You're more accurate with bigger guys. Now, all of a sudden, he's throwing the 6'1" receivers instead of a 6'5" receiver. That's different. but they want more speed. This is the reason they did that.
Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. Happy anniversary again.
Oh,
thank you very much. The 15-year anniversary of the legendary.
Play to win the game.
All right, Buster Olney's getting up early for us again in L.A. He'll be down in the lobby getting nasty looks and talking about the World Series next.